Hey guys, just a quick heads up at the top of the episode to let you know of a cool new feature for this podcast in the new year.
Yep, from now on, we're going to be handling the question of the week a little bit differently. Since your voicemail messages to us on the show's 5th anniversary went so well, we're going to be using that function on our website to handle our question of the week segment.
So from here on out, if you have an answer for our question of the week, simply visit our website at dynamicduel.com and click the red microphone button in the bottom right of the screen. You'll be prompted to leave us a voicemail message up to 20 seconds long, which we will put on this podcast if you're picked for the no prize or an honorable mention.
Yeah, it's a nifty new feature that we think will result in some more fun, engaging content for you, the listeners. Again, to answer our question of the week from here on out, click the red microphone button at dynamicduel.com and record your response.
That's it. On with the show. Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are doing a throwback review of the 1997 film Batman and Robin, directed by Joel Schumacher.
And we use the word film loosely here.
Yes, yeah. No, I can't say that I've been looking forward to this review at all. It's not a good film, obviously, and my Arnold Schwarzenegger impression is not fun. It's like, get to the chopper! Like, that's the best I could do. So
yeah, I can't do it well either. Come with me if you want to live. I can't do
it. So this review, it's going to be hard to get through, but we're all going to do it together.
Yeah, and of course we're reviewing this now in tie-in to our last episode where we pit Dr. Octopus against Mr. Freeze. I have to say, I lost a whole lot of respect for Mr. Freeze by watching this movie.
No, don't do that. Gain respect by listening to the last episode again.
There you go. Yeah, I'll have to do that.
Yeah. Before we get into our thoughts on the movie, we're going to break down the comic book movie news items from the past week, including the release date for Morbius being pushed back again, and the first trailer for the Superman and Lois series on the CW.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
Remember that this podcast now has a card game out called Dynamic Duel War, and you can get it by joining us on Patreon. On any one of our tiers, you can find information on how to get the game. If you want to have fun simulating battles between Marvel and DC characters, check us out at patreon.com/dynamicduel.
And also just a quick reminder, guys, to please subscribe to this show if you haven't already. And if you have, please help us grow our podcast audience by leaving a quick rating or review on whatever platform you're listening to us on, or by sharing us with your fellow DC and Marvel fans. And with that out of the way,
quick to the no prize.
A no prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. We asked you guys, what villain do you think Ethan Hawke will play in the upcoming Moon Knight television series? Now, we got a few answers. We did reach out to those who gave us an answer and asked them to resubmit via voicemail on dynamicduel.com. And a few of those people did, so those are the guys who will be featuring in this segment. Our first honorable mention goes to Nathaniel Wagner, who said,
Hey, it's Nate here, and for the question of the week, I think it would be great to see Ethan Hawke portray Khonshu. One of Moon Knight's biggest villains is himself, so for Khonshu to be the antagonist for that would be amazing. Praise be to Khonshu.
And that's a pretty interesting answer. Khonshu, the deity himself, was a villain in the Moon Knight comics later on in the series. He looked really cool because he had like this bird skull head. It was really badass. If Ethan Hawke did play him, it would be like this motion capture thing.
That being said, I don't know if Ethan Hawke could play an Egyptian deity. I mean, I think that's what the movie Gods of Egypt got in trouble for, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, with
Gerard Butler and what's his face?
The guy from Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah. Jaime Lannister.
Yeah, Jaime Lannister. Yeah, that movie kind of dropped the ball there. That being said, yeah, I would prefer probably to see an Egyptian actor playing the Egyptian deity. Our next honorable mention goes to John Starosky, who said,
I think Ethan Hawke will be the character of the profile. Even though he's not a top-tier villain, he could be used as a main recurring lower-level villain throughout multiple series based on his abilities, and Ethan Hawke's acting knack would be really good across the board.
The Profile is an obscure Moon Knight villain, but he's one that to me always had one of the most interesting power sets. He's basically a guy who is a superhuman profiler. Just by looking at people, he can determine like pretty much everything about them. He can like read people, as it were. Similar to how like an FBI profiler works, you know? It was just really fascinating, and he does kind of resemble Ethan Hawke. So I could totally see them going down this route if the series were going down more of a gritty crime drama, as opposed to like the supernatural action-adventure path that it seems to be going. Thanks to both John Starosky and Nathaniel Wagner for submitting your answers via voicemail.
But we want to thank everyone who took the time to send us an answer, including Robert LeBlanc, Gabriel Bradham, Matt Estes, Zach Hepburn, Trevor Wallace, Richard McGrew, and Shane Habazine.
Yeah, guys, next time, be sure to go to the website, hit that red voicemail button. But the winner of this week's No Prize goes to Michael Haggerty.
For the question of the week, I believe Ethan Hawke will be playing Morbius. But no red or blue pill this time. Just the Hawkenaissance.
Morpheus. I just realized I don't know anything about any Moon Knight villains, like, ever.
I loved this answer. Morbius, I think, is probably the best response, given that Ethan Hawke could totally play the character, and considering the direction that the series is going, which is like, again, the supernatural action adventure, kind of in the vein of Indiana Jones, Morpheus, I think, would fit right in. As Michael said, this is not in reference to the Matrix character with the red and blue pill, but rather Morpheus is a character who lost the ability to sleep. So like all of this like subconscious built up psychic power manifests as this like Ebon energy that he can shoot out and manipulate things, and he can also communicate with people who are sleeping and stuff like that. He's a pretty cool, dark character, but he has that supernatural vein that I think the upcoming series will steer toward.
Interesting.
And he's one of Mark Spector's greater villains. Some names that we didn't get from our honorable mentions and the No Prize winner were characters like Black Spectre, Jack Russell, Werewolf by Night. And I think both of those characters would also be heavy contenders for the role that Ethan Hawke is playing.
I guess we'll find out when the show debuts. But congrats once again to Michael Haggerty. You win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on in this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And with that out of the way,
on to the news.
All right, speaking of Morpheus, we're now going to be talking about a character named Morbius, Marvel's living vampire character, an enemy of Spider-Man, who has his own film coming out starring Jared Leto. Now, that movie was originally going to be released last year, and then it got pushed to this March, and then last week it got pushed to October, which was then taken by the new James Bond movie, so Sony backed off and they pushed it to next January.
Holy shit. I know that they pushed it to October, but I didn't hear about them moving it to January too. That sucks.
Yeah, it does, because I feel like October was a prime spot for the movie, considering that, you know, it's the Halloween month and the movie's about, you know, this quasi-vampire superhero character. We got a trailer for this movie like ages ago. It wasn't bad. We did get the huge surprise that Michael Keaton will be playing the Vulture in some capacity within the film, which I think was kind of a big giveaway on behalf of the studio, but it did get me excited for the movie. And the fact that it keeps getting pushed back, it's almost coming out a year from now. And that sucks because apparently Sony has nowhere else to take the film. You know, Sony doesn't have their own streaming service. All right, maybe I think they do. It's on PlayStation, right?
I have no idea. I don't have a PlayStation.
Yeah, it's where Powers came out on. That being said, not very many people would be able to get to see the movie if they went that route.
Now, this doesn't surprise me because Sony has gone on the record saying that they weren't going to release any kind of tentpole film during the pandemic. Since the pandemic is still going on and we don't know when it's going to go away, of course Sony is going to push it because they don't want to lose money on their films. They can't afford to in the same way that like Disney or even Warner Brothers sort of can.
Yeah. That being said, there's no word yet as to whether or not they're going to be pushing back the Venom sequel, Venom Let There Be Carnage. That movie is still scheduled to come out in June.
Yeah, we'll see what the pandemic looks like, you know, at that time.
It does make me nervous, though, for the fate of Black Widow. Will that movie get pushed back too, just like everything else is moving out of the spring timeframe? Or will Disney finally cave in and just put that movie on Disney Plus so we could watch it already?
I don't know. I don't think Disney will push it again. I think whatever happens, they may do what HBO Max did and do a simultaneous debut on Disney Plus and in theaters.
I am crossing my fingers that that will be the case, because I think that would be the best case scenario for everybody that wants to see this movie in whatever way they feel the most comfortable with during this time.
I do think that if it's on Disney Plus, though, it'll be under Premier Access. So it's not going to be, free with the subscription. You'll probably have to shell out like another $30.
I don't care. I'll do it.
And I'll just mooch off of you, so it's fine. I do wonder where this puts Morbius in the whole like Spider-Man timeline, though, because there were cues as to like Spider-Man, his identity being revealed at that point, and the whole thing with the Vulture possibly setting up the Sinister Six. I mean, this movie should have come out before the next Spider-Man movie, and now it doesn't look like that's even going to happen.
Yeah, the next Spider-Man movie is scheduled to come out in December. It's still unclear as to whether or not Sony will keep it there or if they'll push it back as well to come after Morbius.
Either they're going to have to do a lot of tricky cutting in Morbius, or I think Spider-Man gets pushed. But who knows if Disney will even let them do that, because I'm sure they have a say in whether that happens or not, too.
Maybe. At the end of the day, even though Marvel's making all the creative decisions, it is Sony's baby. So we'll see. I am highly convinced that Spider-Man is going to get pushed back, just because I don't feel like they're far enough in their production of the movie to warrant a release this year.
Yeah, we don't even have a title of the film yet.
Right, exactly. They're a little bit too far behind in production, I think, for it to still make that December date.
Please do not let 2021 turn out to be like 2020, where everything gets pushed back to the following year. That's just going to suck.
Yeah, well, at least we know that won't happen for the DC movies.
That's right. Moving on to the DC news, we got the first official trailer for the Superman and Lois television series that will be premiering on the CW network at the end of February.
It looks very well produced, I have to say,
Yeah.
from the looks of this trailer.
Yeah, the budget definitely looks like it's pretty high. It feels like a nice mixture between like Man of Steel in terms of like cinematography and Smallville, just like a close, intimate look at the personal life of Superman, which is a great way to introduce conflict into his life. A lot of people struggle liking the character of Superman because he's so invulnerable. But when it comes to his personal life, dealing with, like the struggles of being a husband, of being a father, he becomes a little bit more relatable and I think a little bit more accessible. And they definitely seem to be playing off of that in this trailer.
Now, do Superman and Lois have teenage sons in this show?
They have one son. I have no idea who the other guy is, honestly. But he must be pretty close to the family because Clark Kent's going off and giving away his secret to him, along with his son. It's like, what? What is going on? Why would you do that? $20 says that kid ends up becoming like a villain or something. I don't watch the CW shows, so they may have introduced him in one of those. I just have no idea who he is yet. Watch it be like Lex Luthor Jr. or something like that.
Now, even though you don't watch the CW shows, you have seen Tyler Hoechlin's portrayal of the Superman character, and you said that you were impressed.
Yeah, I saw him a couple of times, most recently in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event that they did. And yeah, he's not a bad Superman. I think he brings a lot of appeal in a way that perhaps Henry Cavill doesn't, just because of the darker world that Henry Cavill Superman inhabits. This trailer is not like lighthearted by any means. It also is pretty, I don't want to say dark, I guess moody is the right term. Mm-hmm. It seems to be very dramatic. That said, I love the line where Clark is like, sometimes I really wish I could get drunk.
Can he not? I mean, I don't see why he couldn't.
Of course he can't. He would need like Kryptonian alcohol to get drunk.
Yeah, just slip some kryptonite in your booze. You get a nice green glowing cocktail there.
And then you die. It does look like there's going to be some pretty cool action in the show as well. We get to see Superman flying around and throwing some beams and even do like some super breath. And I think we see what appears to be Metallo in the trailer. I'm not 100% sure, but there is like a robot suit with some kryptonite, so it's probably him. This trailer actually has me pretty pumped to see the show. I wasn't planning on watching it earlier, again, because I don't really watch any of the CW shows, but I'll definitely have to check out the pilot for this one.
Yeah, and when you do, be sure to let us know what you think.
Will do. It's coming up pretty soon, so if you, the listener, check it out, send us your thoughts as well. And let us know what you think of the show and Tyler Hoechlin's performance. But that brings us to our question of the week. Who is your favorite Superman actor of all time, and why?
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 20 seconds, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you in the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Be sure to answer before January 30th. But I think that does it for all the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and get on to the main event, where we review the absolute shit show dumpster fire of a film, Batman and Robin.
Yay! So, Batman and Robin was released in 1997 and was directed by Joel Schumacher, who also directed the previous film in the initial Batman film franchise, 1995's Batman Forever, and that was a massive hit. This film, however, was a massive bomb, both critically and at the box office. It's on many critics' lists as one of the worst films of all time, and it nearly killed the superhero film genre forever. It's just the fucking worst. If you haven't seen it, don't even bother. Trust me, even as a huge DC fan, I do not recommend it. Those would be the 2 longest hours of your life that you could never get back.
I forgot how long this movie was. Good God. It's like shitting your pants and then having to sit in it for 2 damn hours. It is way too long of a movie for how bad it is.
Yeah,
I was so ready for it to be done by the time those end credits rolled. It was not even funny. I don't know how many people follow along with us and watch the movies that we're going to review as we review them, but for everyone that watched this film, I apologize. Like, I've only seen this movie once my entire life. I had probably forgotten exactly how bad it was since I was like 11 years old, since I saw it last. I'm sorry. This movie is really, really bad.
It's funny because there's like a lot to look at, but the film cannot be more boring. I think I remember seeing this movie for the first time at the drive-in. Like, we didn't see it right away when it first came out.
No.
And I think I fell asleep when we watched it for the first time. Watching it again recently, I couldn't get through it. I also had forgotten how long it was. About an hour in, I paused it just to double check that things were like going to end soon, and I wasn't even fucking halfway through. I felt literal dread. It was like, it's just the worst feeling. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to sleep, I'll try again in the morning. It feels too long because it is. There's just way too much unnecessary everything. Like, too many characters, too many crappy action scenes, too many lazy puns, way too much nipples and glitter and fucking neon. It was an overproduced, overdesigned fever dream, and I don't actually blame Joel Schumacher entirely.
What?
I mean,
why?
Yeah, I mean, he's publicly apologized for how bad Batman and Robin is, but I think Warner Brothers should get as much of the blame, if not more. Warner Brothers actually fast-tracked the sequel after the success of Batman Forever, so they were in a rush to come up with the script. Batman the Animated Series was insanely popular around this time, and 2 of its episodes with Mr. Freeze had won Emmys, so they were like, go with him.
Really? It's strange because the Batman animated series was so true to the spirit of the character from the comics, true in its tone. This movie could not be more different from not just the comics, but from the Batman animated series that it was partially inspired by. This film's tone is so much a continuation of the 1960s television show. I was surprised because we recently reviewed Batman the movie from the 60s show, and every problem that I had with that movie, where it took this kind of adolescent approach to the action and the dialogue and everything, this movie definitely carried the spirit of the 60s show forward. This is essentially the 90s version of the Adam West, Burt Ward television show.
Sort of. I mean, I would say the big difference would be that the 60s show was kind of charming in its low budget quality. This film looked expensive as hell, and so unnecessarily. Like, they didn't need new vehicles in the last act, or new costumes, or Batgirl at all. It was all just to sell toys.
Yeah.
The merchandising for Batman Forever was insanely popular. It was really good, and they made a ton of money off of it. Warner Brothers had toy companies attend pre-production meetings for Batman and Robin, and they let them help design the costumes and sets and vehicles. Warner Brothers explicitly wanted Schumacher to make a very family-friendly 2-hour toy commercial, and the film has about as much substance.
I will be honest in saying that I did think that Robin's ice sled toward the end of the movie was pretty dope. I like the design on that.
With a big fan? Really? You liked that?
Yeah. I just like the big red light up logo on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, I mean, then they got you hook, line, and sinker right there, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going to go buy that toy now.
That was cool. Some of the vehicles actually did not look half bad. The design of this Batmobile is actually kind of cool, like the way the whole thing is in front of him, but from like a practicality standpoint, it's awful. Like, it has no windshield. Like, the bugs are just going to splatter on his face as he's driving down the highway. And he sits so far back in the vehicle that he can't see the front of it.
I actually think that this Batmobile is better than Batman Forever's.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't like it more than the two Burton films Batmobiles, but my primary issue with it is like the light up spinny engine in the front. That's so not Batman. You couldn't get more non-Batman than that.
It is the least stealthy vehicle that has ever been made.
This movie is like the antithesis of who Batman is.
Oh, absolutely. Fans of Batman know that this is not who Batman is in any way, and hasn't been for a very long time.
Now, did you recognize that the first time you saw this movie? Do you think that that's not Batman?
No, when this movie first came out, honestly, I remember not even knowing that DC Comics was a thing. Like when Batman mentioned Superman at the very beginning, this is why Superman works alone. I was like, oh, he just mentioned Superman. That's interesting. Like I didn't realize that, they see each other all the time in the comics. It wasn't until probably like 2 years after this movie came out that I actually started reading DC Comics and started getting into them, because when this film came out, I was still a Marvel fan. Thank God, because I would have fucking killed myself.
I think in addition to like the vehicle design, the other thing that I kind of liked about this movie was the set design. They had some pretty cool sets, even though they all felt like sets, like something that you would see in like a live action production. They were brightly colored and pretty interesting to look at.
No, yeah, this whole film reminded me a lot of like a shitty stunt action production show that you would see at like Six Flags or something like that, I think part of that is like Schumacher's like love of theater in a way. Mm-hmm. But also, again, these sets were designed by toy companies. So they wanted to create these things that you could really play around in. There are some good things about this movie in very small doses. There is a lot of action in this film, and every once in a while it's fun to look at. But most of the time, it's hard to tell what the hell is going on, or like why things are happening. In the opening action scene against Mr. Freeze, there's a moment where Batman and Robin are playing hockey against some henchmen with a diamond for the puck, and Robin finally gets the diamond, and then Mr. Freeze sees a giant sculpture of a dinosaur, so he goes, "What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!" And he freezes it, and it randomly falls apart for no reason, just because it's frozen. And people scatter. And that's it. Like the falling pieces don't knock the diamond out of Robin's hand or trap Batman so that Mr. Freeze can escape. Literally everything continues as it had before. There was no fucking reason for the falling dinosaur other than to show a fucking fallen dinosaur. And maybe squeeze in like a stupid ice quip. But so much of this film is like that. Things happen for no reason.
If you had to take a liberal edit to this movie, how long do you think it would turn out if you kept only the bits of substance?
Jeez, that is an interesting question. I would love to do that. Someone needs to do that. I bet if you took out all of the unnecessary bits, the film would be maybe over an hour. Definitely not 2 hours. You could probably cut the film in half.
I would go so far as to say that you could cut this down to a 10-minute film.
What? I don't know about that.
Because that's how much didn't matter.
Just the whole movie didn't matter.
Yeah, there you go.
Just forget any of it happened. The film is so absurd. I almost want to call it a comedy. I think that's what it wanted to be, but the film was more of a joke. Yet, if there's any redemption to be had with this film, it's as a film you can laugh at rather than with. It's something you put on with your friends and laugh about how stupid the writing is, from the story to the dialogue, just everything.
I could see that. I know Adam Speas had mentioned that the 60s Batman movie has drunk validity, something that you just put on in the background while you get wasted and like occasionally tune in and laugh at with your friends. I think this movie has that same validity, but I do think that it's actually worse than the Batman 60s movie.
Yeah, it absolutely is, for sure. I blame a lot of that on the writing. This film was written by Akiva Goldsman, who interestingly won an Oscar 4 years after this film came out for A Beautiful Mind. It's also interesting because he wrote the film, and then during pre-production, he was apparently like, wait, you guys, this script might actually suck, but Warner Brothers seemingly didn't listen to him and moved forward with it anyway. But I'm not sure how anyone else wasn't like, whoa, this is like a pretty big departure from the Batman films that came prior, starting with Tim Burton's Batman film from 1989. All of these Batmans are pretty stuffed with characters, even going back to the Burton films. But unlike those films, the characters in this film are not interesting at all. But let's talk more about that in our character breakdown. All right, so starting things off with Batman and Bruce Wayne, they were played by George Clooney, who took the role over from Val Kilmer from the previous film. Because Warner Brothers fast-tracked Batman and Robin, Kilmer ran into a scheduling conflict due to his lead roles in the movies The Saint and The Island of Dr. Moreau. According to Schumacher, Kilmer was also pretty difficult to work with anyway, so he hired Clooney based on a drawing of a bat cowl he had done over the star's headshot.
On paper, I think Clooney actually works really well as Bruce Wayne and Batman, but not in this movie.
No, he should have been a lot better than he was. He's been pretty open about his distaste for the film and his performance in it, and compared to the other actors who have played Batman over the years, he is without a doubt the worst, which is weird because Clooney is a fantastic Oscar-winning actor, and he tried to make it work, I think. He tried to make Bruce Wayne charming. Like, Bruce Wayne has never smiled more in a film, but sometimes the smile comes across as if Clooney was embarrassed of the dialogue, and I don't blame him.
That's the feeling that I got. Yeah, I think he was largely uncomfortable with the material that he was filming. I think Clooney could have possibly rocked it as Bruce Wayne and Batman in a better Batman movie. This movie was not it.
Yeah. And also, for some reason, like, Clooney could not keep his head still when he wasn't wearing the mask. Like, almost every time he had a conversation with another character, his head would be bobbing around. It was super distracting. I think he was doing it because he couldn't move his head at all in the bat cowl. Just had to turn his whole body. Bruce Wayne is really the only character in the film to have an arc. You know, he's afraid of death and it continuing to take the lives of those closest to him, like Alfred or Dick. So he's controlling. With Robin, with the villains of Gotham, his existence is all about domination. But there's nothing he can do about the terminal condition of Alfred, the man who raised him, until he realizes at the very end that while he can't dominate death, he can trust others to come up with solutions that he can't. He can trust Mr. Freeze to do the right thing if he's shown trust and compassion in return, because that's just as effective as saving lives as punishing wrongdoing. The sentimental lessons Bruce learns from Alfred in this film are one of the very few things that sort of work in the movie.
Yeah, that scene where he kisses Alfred goodbye, essentially, was definitely the best part of this movie. It was the most real part.
Yeah, definitely. Clooney and Michael Goff, they have a pretty sincere father-son dynamic, but Michael Goff is also, just a really good actor. He and Commissioner Gordon were the only mainstays of the 4-film franchise that started with the Batman '89 film, and Michael Goff had a fantastic dynamic with each of the actors who played Bruce Wayne. So I guess you could argue that it was Michael Goff who really made those scenes work, but Clooney did pull his weight, I feel.
I feel like all of that was way too deep of an analysis for this type of movie.
I mean, it was there.
This movie is definitely not deserving of that type of scrutiny. But yeah, good job for pointing that out.
It was nice the way that Alfred told Bruce that, his only regret in life was that he wasn't able to join him out there, fighting the good fight against Gotham's criminal underworld in the city. That was a
good line. Yeah, I liked that.
Though apparently in this film, it's revealed that Alfred is the one who designed the batsuits. And given the rubber nipples and sculpted ass cracks, I would hate to have seen what Alfred's costume would have looked like.
He would have had assless chaps and, like spiky nipple clamps.
I hate you for putting that image in my head. The Batman suit in this film is probably the worst on-screen Batman suit next to Adam West's, only because of its coloring, though, besides the nipples. It's all black, and I think it could have really benefited from like a splash of bright yellow. If not on the belt, then at least the chest emblem.
I think a lot of people forget that Val Kilmer's second suit in Batman Forever also had bat nipples on it, but I think what made these ones particularly atrocious was that they had both areola and like pointy nipple section. Yeah, they were like very anatomically correct in this suit. Like the ass crack was like too deep within the actor's ass, obviously. And like the bat cod piece was just way too pronounced. It's just too much all around.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think the Batgirl costume went far enough.
No, where's the areola on that one?
Yeah.
Jeez.
You could do fake male nipples, but not fake female nipples, of course. Hashtag free the bat nipple.
Right. Please make that a hashtag. Gosh. Moving on to Robin / Dick Grayson, he was played by Chris O'Donnell, who reprised the role from the previous film alongside Val Kilmer. It's not the most substantive of roles, even though he's technically one of the title characters. He comes across as a whiny, horny moron for a majority of the film, who never really learns the lesson Batman is trying to teach him about not being impulsive. Yeah. I mean, granted, he did listen to Batman at the end, and he put on, the rubber lips before kissing Ivy, but his whole arc was supposed to prove to Batman that he was smart enough to make good decisions. So with the rubber lips not being his idea, but Batman's, it kind of ruins his storyline, especially since the rest of the movie, he continues to get his ass saved.
Right. Robin was the absolute fucking worst in this movie. I hated him. He was so worthless. He did nothing in this whole damn movie but be annoying. From the very opening lines of this film, when he was like, I want a car. Chicks dig the car. I wanted to be like, shut up, Robin. You fucking idiot.
It's unfortunate because Dick Grayson is such a great character in the comics, and Chris O'Donnell was kind of screwed by the script they gave him. It kind of ruined his film career.
Yeah.
He's referred to as Robin in this film, but costume and age-wise, he's closer to Nightwing, which is pretty cool. Like, if there's one good thing I could say about this film, they did a good job with the Robin logo. Like, that emblem is almost as cool as the Bat logo, and I remember admiring it even as a kid. I'll admit to even liking the costume, sans the rubber nipples. The Nightwing costume doesn't traditionally have a cape, but I thought it worked here, along with the red color scheme, since he was technically still called Robin.
Yeah, I have to agree. The Robin logo was badass. Probably the best Robin logo that we've ever seen, honestly, because traditionally it's just represented by the letter R. And I kind of wish that, the comic book Robin would adopt this cool kind of like bat-inspired motif of the Robin bird. I also especially like the way the emblems like kind of stacked on top of each other for the promotional material in this movie.
Yeah, totally. I remember when I was a kid, I made like paper airplanes out of the Batman logo. And once I saw the Batman and Robin logo, I started coloring the Robin on top of it too.
Yeah, it just worked. There's just something aesthetic about it.
I think if this movie didn't suck as much as it does, they probably would have used it in the comics by now. Just like give it to Tim Drake. He could be like Red Wing or something.
No, Red Wing is Marvel.
Please, Marvel copies DC all the time, whatever. Moving on to Mr. Freeze, Dr. Victor Freeze was played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And to this day, I'm like, why? His performance, the suit, nothing about it says Mr. Freeze to me. Like, there were a bunch of other actors, older actors, like Anthony Hopkins, who were considered for the role until Schumacher decided he wanted Mr. Freeze to look like he was chiseled out of a glacier. But being physically imposing was never one of the draws of Mr. Freeze's character. Like, Mr. Freeze is one of the most relatable villains in Batman's Rogues Gallery because at the end of the day, he's just trying to save his wife. And they got that part right in the film. Like, seeing Nora floating in the cryostasis tank was pretty iconic. But the fact that Mr. Freeze was trying to fund research into curing her by stealing diamonds that themselves have a ridiculously high monetary value.
Oh, that's true.
Right? Mr. Freeze said he needed billions for his research. And I looked it up. Just one of those diamonds would be worth billions. And he had like 10. which he wanted to use to power a freeze engine that would help him freeze Gotham and hold it for ransom. You'd think someone as smart as Freeze would have been like, wait a minute, I could just sell the diamonds.
I did not even think about that, but that's so true. That's a huge plot hole in a movie that barely has a plot.
Exactly.
So basically, the entire movie should not exist.
It breaks the film.
It does.
Absolutely. His motive shifts once Ivy tells him that Batman killed Nora. Then he just wants everyone to die, which would have been sinister if it wasn't for how Arnold Schwarzenegger has to exposit everything in excruciating detail, with each sentence needing an ice pun. It's unbearable.
Too many fucking puns. Too many fucking puns. I gotta say that. Every single line that he had was a pun. Like, the midway point in the movie, I was just sick of it. I wanted to mute the television every time he opened his mouth. Right? It was like, here comes another fucking ice pun. Oh, what is it going to be?
We get it. We get it, dude. You like ice. Move on. Just to touch on his costume real quick, that thing is fugly. The way random parts light up like neon underglow, the bizarre headgear, like the suit would have almost been passable if he didn't just have that weird headgear. I guess Schwarzenegger wore like a bald cap for the film, but you couldn't tell. And I thought they did a really good job with like the glittery blue texture of his skin on close-ups.
Yeah.
If they just put those iconic red goggles on him, instead of giving him both cataracts and pink eye, he would have been halfway decent.
Yeah, I think if you gave him like the glass dome helmet with the existing armor, I think that would have actually looked pretty good. You know, of course, in addition with the red goggles.
Moving on to the other villain, Poison Ivy, aka Dr. Pamela Isley, was played by Uma Thurman. It was like watching a shitty Broadway performance.
It was like watching a shitty off-Broadway performance. It was cringe-inducing. I actually felt bad for her. So bad. I'm like, honey, stop. Just whatever you're doing. Like the weird accent. Like, why the accent?
Right?
Why
she
did she get an accent?
3 or 4 different accents in this film. Like ranging from American to fake really bad British.
There were some parts where she was like also like Southern.
Yes. That was just out of nowhere. I did not get it.
I think she was trying to like evoke the performances of the 60s television show, like an Eartha Kitt or Lee Merriweather type performance. And it just came off so ridiculously cheesy.
At least when you watch an Arnold Schwarzenegger film, like you know you're not going into it for Arnold's moving performance. The guy is not a great actor. But Uma Thurman is. She was nominated for an Oscar for her role in Pulp Fiction just 3 years before this film was released. So to see her crash like so spectacularly here is kind of tragic. You know, and it's not for a lack of trying. Like, she really gives it her all. It's a big performance. Again, like something you'd see on a stage. But that just doesn't work in film. John Glover, the actor who played the evil scientist Dr. Jason Woodrue, he said that before each take, Schumacher would yell into his megaphone, "Remember, everyone, this is a cartoon." So the actors went into their performances with that mindset, and I think it shows across the board.
Ugh.
Now, in regards to Poison Ivy's costume, it's so bad. Uma Thurman is an attractive woman, but the drag queen approach they took with her design here was not appealing.
That's what I thought she looked like, too. I thought she looked like, you know, the next contestant in RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yes.
You know, she's not an androgynous type person, but the way they styled her makeup made her look androgynous.
It did, yeah. I mean, the costume starts off fine, but it gets progressively worse until they go with like bizarre hairstyles and completely destroy her eyebrows. At one point, she goes from wearing these like fingerless gloves with like pine scented car fresheners on her palms to wearing full-on green dishwashing gloves with red fingernails painted on. It's so gross. And that's the only way to describe it. Now, character-wise, she starts off a little crazy, you know, wanting to create plant/animal hybrids so that plants would be better able to protect themselves. After she's resurrected from death, she wants to kill mankind, but Batman and Robin are in the way, so she teams up with Mr. Freeze. But their future vision of killing everyone and being the last remaining humans really is incompatible. Mr. Freeze wants everything to be like a frozen hellscape, and she wants a tropical paradise. It doesn't make sense why they would team up.
No, it doesn't. And you would think that she would fucking know that plants need sunlight and warmth in order to grow. There's no vegetation in a tundra. Why is my question. Why
these people have doctorates? What are they thinking?
Yeah, they're both supposed to be scientists. Ugh, God. Ugh.
It's crazy when like the 11-year-old version of you is smarter than the doctors in the movie. It's not right. Now, Mr. Freeze isn't the only person that she teams up with. She also teams up with Bane early on. You know, they're both products of her Venom formula. Now, I understand why they went this route with Bane, since they could have him be her muscle. But it's one of the biggest disservices done to a character in comic book history. Like, Bane in the comics is highly intelligent, and here he's like a luchador Hulk.
Yeah, especially because he's green in this movie.
And he goes around saying, like, Bane, smash, and bomb, and stuff like that.
Bomb. Yeah, as we all know from the animated series and from The Dark Knight Rises, Bane is one of Batman's most formidable foes because he's a match for Batman both physically and mentally. In this movie, he's mindless, which is so bizarre for one of the smartest characters out there.
I guess the guy who played him, the actor, Robert Swenson, was massive. He was over 400 pounds. He's 6'4". He made Schwarzenegger look like a small fry. When Schwarzenegger won Mr. Universe, he was like 200-something pounds.
Whoa. Steroids, man.
I guess. He died of heart failure like a few months after this movie came out. It's pretty sad.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes. What's almost worse than the fact that he was mindless, though, was how easily he was defeated in all the instances he went up against the dynamic duo. Like, he got kicked into a pile of boxes and was out. And then, like the tube thing, it just got kind of flicked out of the back of his head and he's done, It was so embarrassing.
It was.
And after all, this is the character that's supposed to break Batman's back.
How do you have Bane in a movie and not have him, at least lift Batman up to, break his back like they did in the animated series? They didn't even do that. What a waste. The last character I want to talk about is Batgirl, a.k.a. Barbara Wilson, played by Alicia Silverstone.
Barbara Wilson? Say what?
Yeah, normally the character is Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon's daughter, but for some reason, they made her Alfred's niece in this film. The character in the film is supposed to be British, but Silverstone didn't even attempt a British accent.
I think they made her Alfred's niece as opposed to Commissioner Gordon's daughter just so that they could get her in the Batcave to set up her origin.
Yeah, I buy that. That makes sense. She was kept a secret by Alfred for some reason, and she travels to Gotham in order to free her sick uncle from his life of servitude, though once her uncle is cured, she seemingly ends up being okay with him being a butler. Apparently, Silverstone was the first and only choice to play the character. They didn't audition anyone or anything like that. She had just come off of her success from Clueless. Her performance here is a bit too cute and childlike, even when she's not putting on an innocent facade for Alfred. The relationship between the two doesn't quite make sense either. He doesn't want her riding a dangerous motorcycle at first, but then he reveals that he designed a suit for her to fight crime alongside Batman. It's what?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, what does he want for her? She didn't come across as tough or capable really in what she was doing at all. Except for maybe the hacking stuff where she, a whiz, managed to crack a 3-character passcode. Who can do that?
Yeah, she had an unlimited number of attempts to do it, apparently.
But when she was fighting both Poison Ivy and when she flipped Robin, she was like, hiya!
Yeah, she did that several times.
So stupid.
And she's loving and doting to Alfred, but then she's like, fuck your secrets, Uncle Alfred. I'm going to hack into your shit.
And that was kind of messed up. I mean, Alfred entrusted her with that documentation. Although I want to know why Alfred was giving Batman and Robin secrets to his brother. Was that because he wanted his brother to come and serve as Batman and Robin's butler after he died?
Yeah, that was my impression. It was kind of manipulative on Alfred's behalf, though, because he knew she was going to hack into his disc that he gave her. So it's why not just take her down to the Batcave yourself?
Yeah, that whole end scene where Alfred's face comes up in the Batcave and he's like, intruder alert. It's dude, you're putting your face on an intruder alert screen. If the bad guy didn't already know at that point who Batman was, he for sure knows now because there's his fucking butler's face on this intruder alert screen. So dumb.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That is horrible. Barbara was also a love interest of sorts for Robin, though it's not really reciprocal. She comes off as rude, and he comes off as, a creepy stalker. I think they wanted her to come across as, tough and self-sufficient. But I don't know, if they wanted that, they should have hired Alicia Silverstone, who comes across as, very innocent and naive.
That scene where she visits and then Bruce is like, well, then it's settled. She's staying. And the look on Robin's face where he has the world's biggest grin. It's so inappropriate. It's so weird.
I thought it was inappropriate how he kept putting his arm around her and pulling her close to him as she was staring at her sick uncle, just all sad. He was totally taking advantage of that situation.
Robin's such a creeper in this.
That does it for the character breakdown. Let's move on to the plot breakdown now, which, fuck. The film starts off with an extreme close-up of Batman and Robin's rubber nipples, codpieces, and ass cheeks as they suit up in the Batcave. It is, no lie, the absolute worst opening to any film in cinema history. The Batmobile and the Redbird motorcycle emerge, and Batman and Robin race to the Gotham Museum to stop the new villain, Mr. Freeze. And as they leave the Batcave, we also learned that Alfred might be sick. At the museum, Mr. Freeze freezes all of the security guards and steals a diamond before Batman and Robin arrive on the scene, and they start wrestling for control over the diamond.
The way these fight scenes played out, I'm very much surprised that we didn't see the pow and bam exclamation graphics pop up on the screen.
Mr. Freeze finally gets the gem and escapes in a rocket ship launched from his weird-ass vehicle that looks like the front engine of a train.
Yeah, that was weird.
I did not get that vehicle. Batman makes it inside the rocket, and Robin grabs onto the outside as it launches into the sky. This whole thing is pointless. I don't understand the whole, going up in a rocket only to come back down thing. It was just weird.
Yeah, I think maybe it was to set up another toy where Batman and Robin could have, surfboard accessories when they're, surfing off the doors from the rocket ship. But other than that, I have no explanation because, again, the scene ends with them, in one of the smokestacks, I think, of a Gotham City factory, and Robin gets frozen by impulsively leaping through a door.
And it's Batman gets so mad at Robin for, getting frozen. But did he, not forget that Robin also saved him from the rocket ship? It's how crazy and impulsive can you be? You got iced. It's dude, you just fucking got iced too.
Yeah, his arms.
And he's lucky it was just his arms. In fact, it makes no sense that it was just his arms. Batman, of course, thaws Robin. What's really interesting is that apparently Chris O'Donnell did not shoot a single scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Anytime they were in the same frame, which was practically never, it was always a body double.
Really? Oh, that's fascinating.
In the next scene, we're introduced to Dr. Pamela Isley, who is killed by her colleague, Dr. Jason Woodrue, after she learned that he was corrupting her research to create super soldiers for hostile nations.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate the fact that he called it a super soldier serum.
Pamela is later resurrected as Poison Ivy and kills Dr. Woodrue before taking Bane with her back to Gotham City, where Bruce and Dick learn about Mr. Freeze's origin and his diamond-enhanced suit. Bruce develops a plan to lure Freeze with the Wayne family diamonds.
Now, this is the part where we see Mr. Freeze's henchmen, singing Christmas carols or something like that, right?
Yeah, he's trying to get them to sing the Mr. Snow Miser song.
So ridiculous. It must be so horrible to be a Mr. Freeze henchman. It's when they're handing out, flyers for all the different villains that you could be a henchman to. The people that showed up late got Mr. Freeze because they had to, live in, a refrigerator and they're freezing their asses off. All their boogers were frozen and everything. And they had to, sing songs. It's just so fucking ridiculous. It would be the worst to be a Mr. Freeze henchman.
And everything Mr. Freeze says here in this whole scene is just the most unbearable exposition. Again, too many ice puns. It's so hard to get through. Back at Wayne Manor, Alfred's niece, Barbara Wilson, visits, and Bruce offers to let her stay. That night, we see Alfred searching online for his brother, and Barbara sneaks away from the manor with a stolen motorcycle. At the Gotham Observatory, Bruce Wayne explains to the press how a new telescope can see around the planet using a system of mirrored satellites. Bruce is confronted by Ivy, who proposes Wayne Enterprises cease all environmentally toxic work while threatening everyone else. Ivy learns of Batman and Robin and realizes she needs to eliminate them in order to take over Gotham with plants. Freeze learns that the Wayne Diamonds will be at a charity gala, which Poison Ivy crashes, using pheromone dust to seduce Batman and Robin, turning them against each other.
Poison Ivy's entrance in this scene was the stupidest idea. Oh my God. Her and Bane are in these monkey suits and they start doing this weird belly dance type thing. And it's but she's wearing the big fluffy monkey suit. It's so not sexy. And she's slowly removing her gloves. I think it's supposed to be some kind of burlesque thing, but it's so fucking ridiculous. This is really the part where I wanted to shut off the movie. I had made it this far with everything stupid that happened with the whole hockey fight scene and, the bat ice skates in the boots and everything, all the ridiculous stuff like that. When those purple monkeys started dancing, I was I'm out. I gotta tap out. This is too much. And little did I know that I was barely, probably not even halfway through the film.
No, you weren't. Not yet. Mr. Freeze shows up and steals the diamonds, impressing Poison Ivy and escaping in his weird vehicle. When Mr. Freeze escapes the party, Batman and Robin give chase, during which Batman disables Robin's bike, preventing him from completing a jump he doesn't think Robin can make. Batman does make the jump in the Batmobile and takes out Freeze. And this scene didn't make sense to me either, because I would think that the motorcycle would make that jump long before the car did. That Batmobile was so front-end heavy, it would have just gone straight down like a rock.
Yeah, well, same thing with Mr. Freeze's vehicle too. That thing was very front-loaded as well.
For the rest of the film, anytime Bruce and Dick are seen at Wayne Manor, they're always arguing about trust, and they're arguing over Ivy, and it just gets really old, really quick. While Freeze is put in his cell in Arkham Asylum, Poison Ivy takes over a gang's hideout and fills it with her plants. At Wayne Manor, Dick spots Barbara sneaking out again, and he follows her to a motorcycle street race where he saves her life from some corrupt competitors.
Now, that scene where, like, the cheating gang swings on these, like, ropes and elaborately throws down this wall of fire that the bikes can't get through, so they fall off their bikes and they almost slide over the edge of this bridge. What were those bikes supposed to do if they weren't stopped by the fire?
Exactly.
They would have gone over the bridge
Exactly.
anyway.
Where was this course supposed to go? Because if they kept going straight down it, they would have just died.
Right?
That whole thing was just so pointless. It had Coolio. The planned sequel they had for this film, it was going to be called Batman Unleashed or maybe Unchained, one of those two. And Coolio was being considered for the role of Scarecrow.
That's weird.
Yeah, so I guess he was like Jonathan Crane in this film. It is beyond weird.
Coolio must be a big fan of comic books because he also had a large role within the 2003 Daredevil movie before it was cut.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's back in the director's cut though, right?
Right, yeah.
Dick and Barbara arrive back at the manor, and Barbara confesses that she was kicked out of school and is there to take Alfred away from his life as a butler. Dick and Bruce learn that Alfred is sick and dying. Meanwhile, Poison Ivy breaks Mr. Freeze out of Arkham, and Bane retrieves his cold suit. And I didn't hate the design of Arkham Asylum in this film. Like, I liked it better here than, like, in Batman Begins. This look was way much more of like a haunted house, kind of sinister looking building. And I think that's how Arkham Asylum should look. Especially like the interior cells and stuff. I feel like that was taken straight from the comics. When Batman and Robin learn that Ivy broke Freeze out of Arkham, they meet the police at Freeze's ice cream lair, where Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy also arrive to retrieve Freeze's diamonds, Freeze engine, and wife. While Mr. Freeze takes out the police, Bane and Ivy make short work of Batman and Robin, turning them once again against each other. Batman realizes what's going on and saves Robin from being kissed. Before escaping, Ivy pulls the plug on Nora.
Yeah, that was messed up. I forgot that she killed or allegedly killed Nora during this movie.
It all happened off screen. Like, the whole killing of her and then the whole saving of her. It was kind of like an unfair kind of twist at the very end. Like, oh, actually, she's alive.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't earned.
It was cheating. Ivy tells Freeze that Batman killed Nora, and Mr. Freeze vows to freeze all mankind in revenge, allowing Ivy's plant/animal hybrids their chance to flourish.
Again, which doesn't work. Between that and the diamond thing, the whole plot of this movie is just so nonsensical that I think they should really stop showing it. Just in general. Like, burn all existing copies, erase all digital copies, and just never have it exist anymore.
Just like 1984, that shit. Just like erase it from history.
Yep.
They should. It's revealed that Alfred has stage 1 McGregor syndrome, which is the same illness suffered by Nora Freeze, which is super convenient. And as Bruce and Dick continue to argue over Ivy, Alfred gives Barbara a disc containing a secret message for his brother, which Barbara hacks her way into, learning that Bruce Wayne is Batman. At a dedication ceremony for the telescope, Ivy seduces Commissioner Gordon into giving her the keys to the police headquarters roof. Bane steals the bat signal and modifies it to show the Robin logo instead. Bruce pleads with Robin not to answer the call, asking him to trust him about Ivy. While this is going on, Mr. Freeze and Bane take over the telescope, connecting the freeze engine to it to turn the telescope into a giant freeze ray. Robin follows the Robin signal to Ivy's lair, where she tries to seduce and kill him with a kiss, though rubber lips save him. Batman appears, but gets tangled up in Ivy's vines, after which Barbara appears, now suited up as Batgirl, and kicks Ivy into her own plant, which for some reason tries to eat her this time.
I don't understand that because Poison Ivy entered into this scene coming out of that same giant flower.
Exactly.
And at the end, she like gets tossed into the flower and she's like, curses! And she's done. She's like defeated.
It is so lazy, so completely lazy that they couldn't find a better way to dispose of her. They're just like, just kick her back onto the plant, we'll have it eat her. Makes no sense, she controls plants.
Exactly.
What is going on? It's unacceptable. Batman, Robin, and Batgirl decide to join forces to take on Freeze, who's freezing the city. Luckily, the dynamic trio now have new vehicles capable of traversing the ice-lined streets. That came out of fucking nowhere. Like, did they go all the way back to the Batcave for this?
Probably, but also, you know, if their freaking shoes have built-in ice skates, their vehicles are probably equipped also.
Jeez. So random. So completely random. They make their way to the observatory telescope and determine that they can use the mirrored satellites to charge the telescope into a heat ray that could thaw the city. Mr. Freeze shows up and he and Batman fight, while Robin and Batgirl encounter and defeat Bane. Batman gets the upper hand on Freeze, who sets off ice bombs he and Bane had set up earlier that destroy the telescope. With Batgirl's computer skills, with a Z, they manage to redirect the satellite mirrors directly onto Gotham, thawing it. Once Gotham is thawed, Batman reveals to Freeze that Nora is alive and that it was Ivy who tried to kill her. Even though there was no way he could have gotten footage of her saying that because he was too busy sawing off vines at the time. Batman asks for Freeze's help in curing Alfred in exchange for allowing him to continue his research in Arkham Asylum with his wife. For some reason, Freeze has the McGregor syndrome cure in his suit, and he gives it to Batman. Like, why is he just carrying that around? As Bruce gives Alfred the cure, Mr. Freeze shows up in Ivy's cell at Arkham to get his revenge. The cure works, Alfred is fine, and Bruce, Dick, and Barbara decide to team up for good. And that's the end of the movie.
Thank God. Way too long. Way too much plot for so little actual plot.
Like you said, if you wanted to cut out all the extra fluff, this movie could be way shorter. Even talking about it feels way too long. By this point, you guys are probably tired of hearing about the movie. Even talking about it is a bore. There's very little to praise. So I give it 1.5 stars out of 5.
That's worse than what we gave the 60s Batman movie.
It is, yeah. It is worse. It is a worse film. It is the worst Batman film ever.
Now, I'd say that there are a few things to like the set design and like the vehicle design was pretty cool, except for the spinning engine on the Batmobile. And that's it. That's the only thing to like about this movie. There's literally nothing else. So I will agree with you. Yeah, 1.5 stars. I won't say that it's quite as bad as something like Catwoman, which would get like 1 star. I think it's just slightly better than that movie because, again, this movie does have some validity if you want to make fun of it, if you want to pick apart the plot and joke about the cringy dialogue and look at the bright colors, you know. So it does have some merit as far as that goes. But yeah, I cannot recommend this movie whatsoever.
A lot of people say that, hey, if it wasn't for this film, we wouldn't have gotten Batman Begins. But even to that, I say, erase this movie from history. But that does it for this review. Let us know what you thought about the movie if you've unfortunately seen it by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you can also find a link to our Patreon page where we offer bonus content and our very own Marvel vs. DC card game called Dynamic Duel War. Check it out right after this episode. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month.
Also on Dynamic Duel is a link to our merch store where we sell t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and more with our Dynamic Duel No Prize artwork. And this week I'll be drawing Mr. Freeze, the good version, not the movie version.
Yeah, and this movie will lead into our next episode when we're going to review another Batman film. It's the new animated movie coming out called Batman Soul of the Dragon. It looks really good. It has like a 70s kung fu kind of vibe going on, and we believe that it's the origin story for Batman in the new DC animated universe. So be sure to tune in next week, guys. We want to remind everyone again to please subscribe to our show if you haven't, or please leave a rating or a review, please, on your platform of choice. Sharing this show on social media or in person is also a big help for us.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, John Speas, Isaiah Bethune, Zachary Hepburn, and John Bechinina for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away.
True believers.